Hello everybody, and welcome to another video. The footage in the background for today could be a variety of things, but I think I'm going to go with the boss blitz. This is the new way that you farm the Crown Pavilion under Divinity's Reach, and it's something a lot of people sort of complained about and said, oh, this is so bad, they broke all the farm, blah blah blah. But if you get an organized group doing it, it's amazing. Some of the footage there, I don't know how much I'll use, but maybe it'll be a variety of the different bosses, shows off that it's actually kind of engaging Zerg content. Like, you're not in a huge 70-man Zerg, you're with maybe 10 to 20 other people max. There's really nice telegraphs and pretty much all the bosses, some kind of unique mechanic to each one, and you get crazy farm. I was only there for maybe an hour to 2 hours, and I had like over 70 champ boxes. Other people in my guild who started doing it earlier on the night while I was asleep, they ended up leaving just like one guild's run night of it with like 300 champion bags. It's pretty crazy, it's great fun, and it's kind of fun too. So anyway, that's the footage in the background, and I know a lot of people will be missing out on that because they don't have a guild or a group of friends that can set something like that up. Maybe you get to enjoy it a little bit vicariously and even get inspired to do it yourself. Trust me guys, it's actually really fun. If I run out of that footage as well, there may be a lot of other things on there. I was doing keg brawl achievements earlier in the week, and we ended up doing some very funny things. Like, the way you farm those achievements up are actually really intricate and cool. Like, you can set up little machines where you're auto-casting certain abilities between other players, and you're like swapping a keg between one another, like with this complete rhythm. Like, if you get 4 people, you can farm one of the achievements really quickly by doing this cool little system. It's amazing. And then there's a little bit of us juggling with kegs and things as well, which even speeds up achievement progress. Kind of fun. There could be some of that in there, and then whatever else I've been doing. The music in the background is again from the Big Long Mix. There will be a link in the description to the mix of video game music I've been using for these videos. In addition to that, however, there'll probably be a track from Final Fantasy X called Wandering Flame. And why is that there? Because I've been listening to it a lot recently. Apparently in the HD remake they butchered the song. By apparently I mean they definitely did butcher the song. It's a beautiful track, and I've sort of been binging on the old version because the new one is just such a disaster. But anyway, so that's there. Let's go on to the questions. The first one's from Inks, and it's from Twitter, who says, in your many recent dungeon runs, which class is the most desired but most lacking from your runs? I'm rather curious. I tend to find this changes a lot depending on the dungeon. Ascalon Catacombs is so easy now, you really don't need them anymore, but Elementalists are really useful. Luckily, I play an Elementalist, so usually it's fine, but I do tend to get a little bit frustrated in Path 1, where you have to break the 6 barrows very quickly, and I find that I've killed 3 of them solo, maybe 4, while the rest of my team is like still DPSing the first damn one. Like, that's irritating. You get a second Ellie though, and it's fine. I think if I didn't play Ellie, I would always want Ellies, just because of the Fiery Greatswords, the Might Stacks, and the Fury. But from my perspective, usually I would say it's Mesmer. Mesmer is just very handy for a lot of situations because of its reflects, and because sometimes there are bosses that if you burn them down quick enough, you can avoid mechanics. Like, for example, in COE, on Path 3, you have to kill the Evolved Destroyer, and you've got to trigger a burn on him. If you've got a Mesmer, it becomes incredibly easy to just burn him out in one go. If you don't have that time warp, and you're with, you know, some maybe slightly lacking pugs, you're going to have to do that twice. You're going to have to trigger the burn twice. Someone's going to fall in the lava and die, and it's just a little bit irritating. So like, Mesmer's nice there. It's almost the same in the Twilight Arbor paths as well, for forward and up. There's that boss right at the start where you have to kill a giant worm and other ones spawn in the room if you're taking too long. A single time warp just gets you through that very quickly. And I tend to find not too many people play Mesmers. I also spot bad Mesmers quite quickly because I see like they're doubling up on Wardens and stuff, and it kind of irritates me. But yeah, Mesmer's a big one. CM though, in Cordicus's Manor, I love having a Thief, and if you don't have a Thief, it's kind of annoying. But like, Thief on Path 2 can just do so much, stealth you through so many things. CM is basically, hey, have projectile deflect and lots of stealth, and the thing is trivial as all hell. And what do thieves have? They have smoke screen for tons of projectile deflects and blinds, and they have shadow refuge and again smoke screen blasting, just to get you through so much stuff. So thieves are cool. I would say the thing I see least in the whole game running dungeons is probably Necromancer, and for good reason, but second to that is Ranger. And I actually really like Ranger. I'm the kind of player, I don't actually care that much about maths, and I don't really care about counting DPS and stuff. I just like to see big numbers and things getting burned down quick, but big numbers really excite me, and so I always enjoy when I have a Ranger on the team popping out a Frost Spirit and using, say, Spotter for the extra crit, and then I can just whip out my Lightning Hammer and I see all the bigger numbers. Or you see the Fiery Rushes doing like that much extra damage just because you've got a Ranger there. I always enjoy that, and there are very few Rangers out there. The ones that are there tend to not be running those skills anyway. because I guess they just don't really know any better, or they don't run that many dungeons, and you don't see it that often. But yeah. The next question is from Mad Minds, who said, I have started feeling kind of cheated about almost every new skin only coming through the gem store. As an old GW1 player, I have been used to running content to get the stuff I want, and not just running the same dungeons over and over to get gold to convert to gems just to get those gloves or boots I really want for one of my characters. I know that ArenaNet has to make money, but I can't shake the feeling that every patch is 50% content, sometimes things that stay and sometimes things that go away, and 50% being new gem store stuff. I haven't even noticed they started advertising for this exact method of getting gems on the release pages. And I must admit it discourages me from logging in and playing, and actually keeping a tab on what's going on in game. I sort of disagree with the idea that it's 50% content and 50% gem store stuff. Maybe if you look at purely rewards, if you're that kind of player that you only measure the value of an update based on the rewards it introduces, yeah, you know, in terms of new stuff you can gear your character out with, a lot of it is gem store based stuff. You know, an entire new weapon set most patches, but only through the Black Lion tickets. Usually a new armor set, or 3 I guess, 1 for each armor class, and then minis and stuff like that to boot. Yeah, I can see that. You know, there is a lot of gem store stuff, and I do think it kind of sucks. I think the biggest thing for me, though, that disappoints me about this isn't that it's gem store stuff, not as in, oh, this is stuff I could just buy for real world money, but because it's not tied to actual content in the game, you feel less of a connection to that reward once you get it. You know, in theory, it's the same thing. It's put in some effort, you know, get some gold, put in some effort, convert to gems, and get a reward, right? But somehow there's a disconnect there. It's very different to say if they added a new meta event in Queensdale with a very low chance of getting these new skins, and then you get lucky and you manage to get it, right? You feel more of a connection. You feel like you got it from somewhere specific, and while you're showing it off to other players, it's not just, hey, this is a sum of gold that this represents. It's, hey, this is something I've done in the past while playing the game. You do feel a greater connection. And GW1 was really great for that. Any skin out there, almost, if someone had it, you could pinpoint it to a specific area of the game. If they had destroyer weapons, you knew that they did a lot of the Eye of the North dungeons. If they had tormented gear, you knew that they did a lot of Domain of Anguish stuff. If they had Zodiac weapons, it was the factions endgame content. If they had obsidian armor, it was, yes, a huge gold gate, but also a representation of the fact that they had at least completed the Fissure of Woe. There was more of a story there and meaning. And these gem store things do take away from that. I can understand why the devs, as you say, are doing it just because they need the money, they need to keep themselves afloat, and clearly people are spending the cash on it, but it's not the same. And another thing to consider too, how is this different to, say, a player buying any of those aforementioned things, say, in the first game? You know, I give these all as great examples, like, oh, the destroyer weapons represent you've absolutely done the Eye of the North content, or even just regular skins, but that wasn't true because many things are meant to be tradable, so they're actually a part of the economy in the game. And so I could, yes, maybe have actually grinded all that stuff out and done it for myself, or maybe I just bought an arm brace of truth straight up and never played any Domain of Anguish. How is this therefore different? Maybe even back in the first game when stuff was tied to areas and regions, it was all just a matter of gold, and that's what the gem store stuff is too. I'm sort of like this, not just with rewards that come in through the gem store, but any feature the devs ever add to the game, I always feel that's a missed opportunity for content. Like, I'm very content minded, and I think whenever they put something in a game, whether it's a new skin, or whether it's something like, hey, you can now refund your traits for free, these were opportunities for them to add events and NPCs and tasks for players to do. So for example, Feature Patch came out, let's take that exact thing, okay, and they changed the game so that you could refund your traits anywhere you like for free. I would have been a lot more excited about that change if, in order to unlock that capacity, you had to do something in Guild Wars 2. You had to complete a new event chain, or, you know, ideally some kind of traditional quest system that was in the game. You'd actually have to go out there and complete something, maybe do a scavenger hunt, find a couple of NPCs, resolve an issue in the game, and your reward is an NPC who says, ah, I can now teach you in the mystical ways of changing your combat style on the fly, and then you, like, unlock that ability. Not only is that, like, tangibly something new players will get to do when the patch rolls around, but also for all future players in the game, it adds that little bit of extra things to do on your way to level 80, or once you reach level 80, something else to go for. And you can think about pretty much any feature for Guild Wars 2 and have that exact same mentality, a content-oriented mentality. So like, the armor stuff, all armor repairs are now free. What if you had to do some quest or task out there for a great armorer in the world who would eventually teach you, ah, look, okay, now that you've done this for me, you get a massive discount on all armor pieces that you ever buy. And if you do it enough, if you do it well enough, eventually it just becomes free. That's the kind of thing I'd like to see, and the same would go for any gem store rewards that are out there as well. Perfect world, they wouldn't be gem store rewards, they would be tied to any of the new content that came, and hopefully permanent content of that, so that people always have an opportunity to get it. But this is their moneymaker. I think one of the biggest other discussions to be had is the balance between stuff that they add as gem store stuff and also stuff that is obtainable exclusively through in-game means, and you know that is a huge offset. There are way less things that they've added for reward in-game compared to gem store things, and maybe that's an issue. Maybe they should be matching 1 for 1. You know, if an armor set goes in the gem store, an armor set goes in the game too, and at least then people would be happy. But again, we're asking them to do more effort, and maybe they're already stretched a little bit too thin. The next question is from Senri Sakura, who says, "Hey WP, you've mentioned several times that you'll be doing a Let's Play for FFX. However, I was curious if you've ever played one of the MMO Final Fantasies, like 11 or 14, or I guess the new version of 14. Why or why not?" The answer to this question is not an interesting one. The answer is no, and the reason is because of sub fees. I actually remember being incredibly disappointed when Final Fantasy 11 came out, because I'm not going to say I was always into the franchise, but there was certainly a point when I was in my early teens, maybe just before my early teens, where I discovered Final Fantasy, and I was super into that franchise. I played 7, 8, 9, and 10, like loads. Those games I played tons, and I even ended up going back to like 1 for a while, and a few of the other really early ones. I got super invested in the franchise, and 11 came around, and at that point in my life, you know, I didn't have a job, I didn't have a way of paying that sub fee for myself. There's no way I could justify it to my parents to spend, you know, monthly money on what is essentially a video game, so it was just an impossible thing for me to play, and it really upset me. I will be honest, most, I think, of my anti-sub fee mentality just comes from this fact that so many games used to exist that just me and my childhood and the kind of environment I grew up in, they would just be impossible for me to play. I could only play those kinds of games once I was earning my own money, and I would put my own money into the sub fee, but by that point, I'd found other free-to-play franchises, and I've just sort of realized it's completely unnecessary, and I still don't play sub fee games. But yeah, so when 14 came out, I didn't even consider it. I do remember there's one of the, you guys probably know, one of the biggest channels on YouTube for gaming at the moment is a group of people called the Yogscast, and when I first ever started watching the Yogscast, they were doing coverage of Final Fantasy 14 when it released, and just how dire and abysmal the game was, how badly it flopped, so, you know, that was never even really on my radar. Realm Reborn, I did kind of consider, you know, at least to play for free-to-play weekends, or when it was out in beta, and, you know, you could actually do that, but it's the same as with WildStar right now. A big part of me is like, why would I want to play the beta of this game and get invested in it when I'm sort of not willing to pay a sub fee for it later? WildStar's maybe a bit of an exception, because I could, in theory, pay my way through that game just through putting in enough in-game hours, but still, you see my point. So yeah, those two MMOs, I never really played that much. I was reading about them because I've been reading so much trivia about Final Fantasy lately, just in preparation for this LP. I was reading about like all the super bosses in that franchise, and the super bosses are basically raids for FF11 and FF14, and the stories about those sound very interesting, like that they had a raid in that game that just was never beat. Nobody ever beat it until level cap was eventually raised. So yeah, that's pretty typical for traditional MMO design, I'm sure, but people couldn't beat this thing. There was another one that people had beat, but every single time someone managed to beat it, the devs wouldn't reward them, you know, would roll stuff back or basically diminish their achievement and say, no, you didn't beat this wasn't the intended way, you know, because they're using some kind of trick with maybe the AI or the environment or whatever it may be, and instead of this just being clever use of game mechanics, as they say, it was instead deemed to be an exploit by the devs, and the intended way to kill the boss was basically impossible as well. You know, that stuff's very interesting to me. I'm sort of sad that I missed out on it, you know, 40 players spending over 24 hours trying to kill a mob, and then eventually succeeding or eventually failing. I missed all that stuff, so the games sort of seem interesting, but I never played them. The next question is from Recalibre Gears, who says, question, the Queensdale train got nerfed. Almost all the champions were turned into veterans. What are your thoughts on that? It's a good thing. Like, I do think it's kind of sad that now we have another, like, core thing in Guild Wars 2. You know, I could, in theory, do a video that is a list of, okay, this is Guild Wars 2's endgame now. And just list out all these random things like Frostgorge train, you know, some of the ore trains, the Queensdale train, fractals, dungeons, blah, 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 blah. And it was kind of nice to have, like, another bullet point on the list, I suppose, that's now now been removed. But when you really think about the gameplay that was involved with that train, I don't think it's very interesting. I don't think it's the kind of thing that players should be encouraged or rewarded to do, and especially considering it isn't an early level zone, and like you could just suck players into just happening to do this because that's where they first created their character. That's kind of crappy. You know, it would feel bad to be a new player that comes into Guild Wars 2, does the Queensdale train in like your first hour or so of gameplay, and then realize that this is the best way to level up from anywhere else, like, and there's really very little incentive to go somewhere else. That's stupid. You know, there are discussions to be had on the map chat stuff as well. I think that, you know, an active map chat, no matter what the community is like in there, is better than none at all. I did mention this, I think, last week. But overall, I think the change is fine. I think another big candidate for a nerf that should be in-game is the Edge of the Mists farm. It sucks that to level up in Guild Wars 2, you can ignore everything about Tyria in the real world. You know, what do people complain about? Oh, all the maps feel empty. Is it because the game has a shrinking population? Maybe that's a very small part of it, but with mega servers, that's not the entire issue. Most of the issue is that people have found stuff like Edge of the Mist. Why go to any of these weird maps and experience a variety of content, potentially more engaging content, when you can just zerg around following a tag in Edge of the Mist and get like crazy good stuff while you're at it? I think Edge of the Mist will be nerfed as a champ farm, because what's the point in getting rid of Queensdale when there's other variations of it that still exist? I think they're happy to leave the end game ones there, though Frostgorge was still sort of nerfed, just because, at least while leveling, you were exploring the whole world, and at the end of the day, that's what you were intended to do. I don't have any sympathy for people complaining about the Queensdale nerf. I think overall it's been pretty positive. The next question is from Brazil, who asks, how many kill bronze phylactery have you had drop from Fractals, and what is this number compared to other drops you've had, like other rings, weapons, and armor boxes? I have actually had a kill bronze phylactery, not loads of them. The thing about me is, I did a lot of fractals, but they were all low-scale fractals. Like, I got my 500 fractal achievement or whatever it was, like, a long time ago. But especially after the fractal update that came out, where they added a couple more and actually, you know, changed the loot and stuff, I've barely done any. I started running them kind of recently, and in one of my first 40 pluses in a long time, I actually got an ascended armor drop, but it was a healing box, so I'm not really going to be able to use it in many places. However, for rings, this is exactly what I've got. I'm in game right now. I've got a kill bronze phylactery. I've got a Malagan's well. I've deleted a lot of things too. I've got 2 royal signets of Doric. I've got an Ossa family ring. I've got a Lunaria circle of the moon, and I've had a fair few more before, but they've probably been deleted. These seem to be the ones that I've decided to dump in my bank now that everything's account bound. So yeah, I don't do them daily. I'm sure when I do, I'll be like one of these people with just tabs and tabs full of this crap. But until then, I'm okay. I also ran a lot of like 30-ish scale stuff, so I'm actually doing well with fractal weapons. I believe it's around the scale 30s that the fractal weapons drop at the highest rates, and one of the main reasons I was doing fractals for a long time was because I desperately wanted a fractal dagger. I saw a thief that was dual wielding an incinerator and a fractal dagger a long time ago, and that's what tipped me over the edge, and I really wanted a fractal dagger. I ended up getting it pretty quick, and I've had a fair few. I've got a fractal mace, got a fractal scepter, got a fractal shield, and I think I have another one as well buried in one of my ults. So I'm doing okay with those, and that's what people tend to want most. Obviously, the big one, for people who don't know, like the best loot as far as I'm aware, it's not something you can sell, but it's just awesome. It's a fractal tonic. You might have heard of it when they added it in the game, but the rates on this thing are really low. If any of you have ever played fractals, in one of them, the Grawl fractal, there's a big boss at the end who's this giant fire shaman, and turns out in the fractal tonic, when you double click it, it'll randomly turn you into something from the fractal, say a tentacle, which is marginally interesting. But if you get the good RNG on that tonic, you can turn into that giant fire shaman. It's like the biggest tonic in the game. It's super in your face and also crazy rare, so it's really, really badass if you actually manage to get it. But people have ran thousands and thousands and thousands of 50 scale fractals and not really seen the drop at all. And like, that's the big gold one to go for. In the process of that, I'm willing to bet people get a lot of rings. Aside from rings, though, I never really had any ascended drops ever. I got my very first one a little while ago, maybe a month ago in World vs. World. I ranked up and got an ascended ring, which was useless. And then, when the PvP rewards tracks came out, I actually got an ascended armor box. It was a soldier statted armor box. That was the first thing I ever got, and it was when the PvP rewards came out. And then, very recently, I got that clerics thing from Fractals 45, and I got a Magi's thing from Tequatl. So, not really great stats on any of them. The soldiers is pretty good if I'm going to be doing World vs. World, but I'd never had any ascended drops ever in Guild Wars 2, and I've literally had like 4 over the past 3 months or so, and 3 within just a matter of weeks between one another. Pretty crazy, and I haven't necessarily been playing more or changed the content I'm playing. I just got lucky. Next question is from Thalandor46, who says, have you given up on the Weird Farms initiative? Did mega servers have an impact on your viability of the idea? Sort of. I actually don't think mega servers are the big issue. I don't want to blame those and make excuses. I just don't have any other ideas for cool farms. Originally it was, let's just do weird stuff and maybe we'll get a bit of money, and you know, it'll be in the name of profit, but whatever. And then we did the weird farm and it was crazy good for cash, but I don't want to do the same thing twice. And now it's like, okay, what do we do? I mean, does the Crown Pavilion farm count as a weird farm? I've just not got any ideas. If you guys do know of stuff that we can do as a group together, please tell me, because I feel bad. It's like another broken promise almost, sort of. Maybe some of these other champ farms will still work, especially considering Queensdale and stuff has been nerfed. Maybe like the QandA Fields one will actually have some merit to it. But especially while this patch is out and you can get hundreds of champ bags from just doing the Crown Pavilion properly, why would anyone want to do those kinds of farms? Maybe they would. Let me know, guys, because seriously, I'm a little bit desperate. I want ideas, and if I do get ideas, I do want to do it, because I like the idea an awful lot. The final question is from Wabba, who says, Dear WP, it seems the Trikey chest and Marjorie's helper D were removed from Keswick Hills on January the 21st, 2014. Maybe this is old news for some, but I just discovered it when I decided to test out some farming runs with the Magic Find buff from D and was very disappointed. I remember you discussing in the past how you thought it'd be great for each area to have its own flavour and unique characteristics like the Trikey chest, so I wonder if you have any follow-up thoughts on this. So for people who don't know, a patch came out in Keswick Hills a while ago where by completing a number of specific new events there, you could earn currency that would be spent at a new vendor in Keswick Hills. And one of the things you could buy from this vendor was a Magic Find buff that would only be activated while you're in Keswick. That's a really cool idea to me. I love the idea and I still stand by it. What I said was that each zone in Guild Wars 2 could have something like this. You know how each zone has like a couple of meta events and things in them right now? What if by completing those specific metas, our rewards were things that gave us buffs while in that area? And you could say keep stacking up your account-wide Magic Find, as we currently do, but maybe you should be able to get higher than that cap. Maybe you should be able to stack, say, Gold Find up as well, specifically in these areas of the game. So if you truly want to dedicate to one region of Guild Wars 2, it's much more profitable for you to hang around there and enjoy those farms. I'd love that. That's like area-specific progression. And you'd have people with goals to, you know, max out all the regions, and maybe you can give people a title for doing stuff like that. Maybe it will end up feeling a little bit like Vanquishing did before in the first game, where you'd go through and do absolutely everything you can in each zone. Maybe you unlock extra buffs just by completing every single unique event that's there. There's a lot they could do, and I was kind of enticed when they did this Keswick Hills stuff, because it looked like maybe that was the idea. They'd have a living world release in each zone eventually, and every time they did, they'd slowly incorporate this into the world. But now you tell me that they've been removed. I believe my memory may be muddy at this point, but didn't that Magic Find boost also have the ridiculous caveat to it in that it actually expired? So it was really useless. It wasn't like a permanent thing you got for Keswick Hills, and it really sucked in that regard. If it was permanent, if it was implemented correctly, I'm sure they wouldn't have removed it. But maybe if they have, they just looked and they're like, oh, nobody's actually doing it, whatever, we may as well get rid of it. And I think that's a mistake. The reason people weren't doing it was because it wasn't implemented just right. You should tweak the implementation and encourage people to do it, rather than just removing these potential assets you've worked on. Again, it's just like redundant design within there. They spend time creating this stuff and eventually just get rid of it for no reason. It doesn't make sense to me, and I think it's a little bit of a shame. Anyway, there you go, guys. That's the Q&A for this week. If you've got any questions, please feel free to leave them down below. I will see you tomorrow for another video, maybe a full look at the Crown Pavilion, but I had quite a good idea a couple of hours ago, and we'll see whether we go through with that. Anyway, thanks very much, guys. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.